Good morning and welcome to On Point, presented by Sutherland Institute. I'm Holly Richardson, also known as Holly on the Hill. I write a blog about Utah politics, and I'm happy to be joined today by Michelle Mumford, recent candidate for the vacant Attorney General spot, Senator Luz Robles, who recently got engaged, and we'll talk about that. On the Senate floor, Senator Deidre Henderson, and Heather Groom, member of the State School Board. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us. I unfortunately have to lead off with very sad news this week, and that was the shootings yesterday of the police officer and the one who died in Eagle Mountain. And then apparently the shooter continued on a rampage aiming specifically at police officers, and what a loss that is for our community.
Yes, we're talking about the shooting death of Sergeant Cory Wride and the shooting of Deputy Greg Sherwood. And from what I understand, they both live in Spanish Fork and Benjamin, which is in my Senate district. So it's really, really hard always to lose police officers. And this is just really unfortunate.
It is, and the one who did die left behind a wife and 5 children and was shot with a high-powered rifle before he even exited his car. He pulled over to help a car that he thought was in distress, and it was an ambush-style attack, and just really a tragedy for the community.
And and a great reminder of the service that our law enforcement provides every single day, and their families as well. It's a huge sacrifice, which is as we get ready to do budgets and put all of that infrastructure in place for them to keep in mind that they're putting their lives on the line every single day.
Absolutely. And in fact, we're going to be having our floor time in the Senate starts in just a few minutes here, and we will be having right off the bats a moment of silence in honor of those 2 officers, sheriff's deputies.
Well, senators, before you both have to leave for floor time, could you just give us a really quick recap of the first week of the session?
Well, the first day started off really fun.
And in the same suit, we have to
say.
That's
true.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, that was really,
the red.
Luz and I showed our bipartisanship by wearing the same outfit on the first day of the session.
And the fact that we are great shoppers. So
oh, yeah, absolutely, totally.
And also, just a reminder that, as women, I don't think that we check on men and their suits, but with women, we tend to have that it's the same suit. But it was a lot of fun.
Noticeable.
We enjoyed that. It was fun.
But the bigger news, other than our matching suits,
that's right,
was that Luz was proposed to.
I know. I was shocked and surprised, and I appreciate that. We just feel really blessed and for the opportunity, and what a better place for me that being here at the Capitol and serving as many of you guys have done before, and it's part of who you are, public service, and your family, and I just appreciate now my fiance taking that. That jump and to do that, and I was shocked. It's not his personality, so I didn't see that one coming.
Well, that's really exciting. We're really happy for you, Luz.
Thank you.
Now, and he's also in state government, is that right?
Yeah, he is a legislator himself,
in Arizona.
Lawmaker in Arizona, and he's been a mayor and a city council member.
Oh my goodness!
He's been elected for a long time.
Okay, so I have to ask, how'd you meet?
Through NALEO, which is the National Association of Latino Elected Officials.
Oh, wow.
Kind of like the work brought us together, but yeah, it's exciting, and our families are excited.
And he's planning on moving here, right?
He better.
I was going to say, we're excited to welcome him to our state.
Yeah, we're excited, and Senator DeBacchus was saying that he will trade a couple of our legislators.
I read that online.
Sure.
I'm from Mesa, so I got a good laugh out of that. But congratulations, that's wonderful.
Yeah, great. It's been a great week, and also, appropriations. So we changed a little bit the way we've done our business in the legislature, and just for our, people that are listening and watching, we've had a week of in-depth appropriations scrutiny, and that's been very helpful. Both of us serve on social services, which is probably, I would say, one of the most difficult appropriations.
It's the one I served on as well when I was in the legislature.
It's a $4.6 billion budget, too. Correct. It's a huge, huge budget to go through.
And but I think it has been very helpful, at least for me, to just go over it line item by line item, and that's something we've never done in Utah, and it's obviously changing the conversation. It kind of feels more of a slow first week when we usually get really intense first weeks with all the bills, but appropriations and budget, it's a priority for us as legislators, and I'm glad we were able to do this.
So this is the most important thing that we do as legislators. If there was one thing that we did every year, it would be, it would be budget.
Approval of the budget.
So this is a very important thing. It's not nearly as exciting, so there's not much, excitement out there to talk about, but it's really important business. In fact, Luz and I probably need to jet right now over to the Senate floor.
Some of that stuff, absolutely.
So we're going to sneak out.
Thank you again for joining.
Enjoy.
Thank you again for joining us. So another topic of conversation, Heather, is the school lunch issue that showed up this week. It made national news. It made international news. The BBC reported on the case at Uintah Elementary where I think 40 students who were behind on their school lunch payments had their school lunches distributed and then removed and thrown into the trash. And so it caused a real outcry. And as a mom, I'm horrified that that would happen to any child. I also understand that it wasn't actually the school who did that, but some bureaucrats who came in and decided that this was the best way to handle the situation.
Right, and I think that's one of the things to take into account and that we just need to remember. And I know that this is something of great concern because even myself as a mother, I mean, that just it hurts my heart to think of that. And just a true confession here, I had 2 children that I didn't realize once had gotten behind in lunch payments, and my little first grader came home last year and said, Mom, they only gave me a piece of bread and water today. And it was like the mommy Hulk, came out. And I was like, and she's like, I told them I wanted to call home and they didn't let me call home. And I said, next time you can call me anytime. And anyway, I basically went into the school and probably a little bit, maybe too forcefully, but the mama bear in me came out and I just said, and maybe Mama Hulk is probably a bit more appropriate, but I just said, you let her call me. And if she, I just didn't see it, that she was behind on that. And so anyway, so now we actually have quite a bit of money in her account because I'm so nervous about it.
Well, I think that was the whole response for the entire state, right? It certainly was mine. It's like if that ever happened to my child, right? The self-esteem and it's not their fault.
When you have a 5 and
6-year-old child, they don't know if the payment has fallen behind or not. Well, and sometimes parents don't know, and sometimes there are mistakes in the accounting, and it's just outrageous to me that they would throw away lunches.
Right. Well, and really that's a lot of times the case, and it also made me think of the parents that, like right now, like I've been able to put money ahead towards her, but what if for those parents that they can't put so much money in reserve, to make sure that doesn't happen. And there needs to be a better way to account for that.
Right.
But one of the things that was interesting is yesterday I actually spoke to a director of a school, and it was very enlightening. He told me about the school lunch program, and he said that they were audited last year. And he said, I want to be really clear. This is more of a federal issue than this is a school or even district. And I think that's one of the things that we need to keep in mind. But he just said that he came in to be audited, and he said that because they actually, they said, give us your menus for the past 6 months. So he gave them the menus for 6 months. And then they went through, and he said out of 2 meals, they said, we don't believe your greens were in order. They said you could have put one saltine cracker on the meal that day, in addition to that food, and it would have been passable. But because of that, they got dinged, and this was the most important part that I learned. He said we did not get paid for our school lunch for those 2 days because they were considered deficient.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, and this is, I think, this experience, I think that the thing that we can learn from it is we need to look at this in a stronger kind of light and also maybe expose this. But there's truly problems if that's the situation. And like you said, the fact that there were people that came in and took away these lunches from these kids and penalized the children, I think is wrong. And right now, I actually am on a government affairs committee for the National Association of School Boards. And I'm going to bring this up in an upcoming meeting because I feel like this is something that really needs to be addressed. And, this is ridiculous. And I think that we all can agree that students shouldn't be penalized that way.
Yeah, I agree.
But the federal government didn't come into the school. I mean, 2 workers from the district came into the school, right? And then all of those adults that were in the lunchroom that maybe didn't know what was going on but could see,
but from my understanding,
stood up and said, stop.
well, but here's from my understanding under federal law because of with the program. So if you do not follow the federal guidelines for that program, then that program will be yanked from you. You will not receive the funding. And just like I spoke to that director last night about this situation, and so they are very I don't know if they wanted to do that. I think maybe we're making an assumption. Maybe they just felt that was maybe their job to go in because if they get audited, then I don't want to say I'm defending it, but I'm just saying that's the law right now, and I think we've got to look at that law and get that changed because I think it's a sick and terrible thing to do to children.
Well, and I think the way that it was applied, right? I mean, I think that
Absolutely.
that shows the deficiency in what guidelines potentially have to be written, which you think would be self-explanatory, but apparently were not.
Right.
But one of the things I did hear is that the woman who's the lunch lady, right, at Uintah Elementary is very soft-hearted, tender-hearted, and she
Yes.
wants these kids to not go hungry, which is, I think, great. She did not realize what was going to happen, and I think people within the offices didn't realize, because what I've heard from people who actually their spouse works there, they told me that if they had known, they would have gone and taken their personal funds, paid for the kids to have their lunch so that they did not have to have this, make sure that the parents were contacted. Yes. So the problem now is you have people attacking people who work at Uintah Elementary,
Absolutely.
threatening them with bodily harm. They've had to have additional security. All of these things. And I think you're right. I think that there's a federal problem. I think that there's a district problem. And I think that the people at the school probably did not realize. But you have to ask yourself, what worker ever, no matter what the level is, says it is okay for me to go up to a child in elementary school and say, you didn't pay for that, take their lunch and throw it in the trash can. Oh my gosh, goodness.
Right.
OMG, osh.
Right.
Who does that? Right? Who does that? And where is the disconnect in your head?
Well, and I want to
that
see where
leads
the
you to
law
do
is.
that kind of stuff.
Right, and I want to see exactly where, is that something that is in statute? Is that where does it say that, and where was the disconnect? Because I
Right.
think the important part is to find out where the disconnect was,
Yeah.
and let's fix it. Whether it's at a federal level, whether it's at a district
Yeah.
level,
Well, and
school,
somewhere
but,
perhaps in that law, perhaps it's requiring. Perhaps, I'm not sure, this is what I heard, that the requirements of the lunch have to be checked, and so they have to wait to check the student
Yes.
out until after they have it on the tray. And so the difference is
Right.
if they can check them before and say, oh, you don't have funds, here is your milk and fruit, and we will call your
Right.
parent today on the
Right.
telephone or in the email or both. Those
Well, and
kinds
it's
of
not
procedures
it's not
are
just
easy
a
to
one-time
set up.
event, right? It's not that they're in arrears one lunch payment.
Right.
It starts to accumulate, and so how
there's
many
some
times were they
forgiveness.
how many times were they contacted, the parents, right?
Right.
So down in my school district,
Right.
people have asked, and the kids in Alpine School District get a little stamp on their hand and a note that says, the stamp means you've fallen behind and you need to catch up, and they have like a 5-day grace period, so that they have the opportunity to replenish the
There's
fund.
an argument about the stamp now too, though, that it's a red mark or
Oh, my.
scarlet letter. Yes.
Okay,
the
well, that-
radio yesterday. They're marked with the red.
Look, it's an easy
I
way
think
to
that's a
remember.
good- right.
It's an easy way
'Cause
to remember. And the kids, like I have kids, they come home from school, and I've had the teachers call and say, "Did your son give you this paper you were supposed to sign?" I'm like,
course not.
"No." And he goes, "Okay, I've sent it home with him every day for a week." And so it's me then who says, "Okay, will you pull that out of your backpack?" Right?
Well, one of the ideas I think that would be great. I think we need to look at the accounting system, like you said, and even how we're doing that. And I think what would be great is maybe an auto email be sent. I mean, any day. I mean, let's use electronics
Well, and I
here.
think it is.
Sure.
I mean,
If they're
let's-
signed up on that, but everybody isn't.
But not
using
everybody
it
has
yet.
that program,
Right.
and even that it all depends on the LEA. When I say LEA, it's so whether it says whatever school they're at. I know that they all have different software, and so for example, the charter school that my daughter attends, they do not have a way to send me an automatic email. It would have to
Right.
be by hand that
Right,
somebody would
right,
send
right,
that.
right.
But I mean, I'm willing to look at different options, and I think that it is something we need to look at. I think we need to figure out where was the disconnect on
Mm-hmm.
this, because, like you said, I mean, any person in their right mind would say this is not a good thing.
Right.
And like you said, I also want people to realize there are times when these lunch women or men, whoever are working in there, and even office staff, sometimes have paid for children's lunches
right.
just because they care so much for those kids. So I
That's
don't
right.
want to villainize
That's right.
her as well as this system. And like I
Right.
said, this is something we definitely need to look at and resolve.
So we've talked a little bit about the problem and the broad solution looking at it. What's happening right now with that specific solution? Do you have any insight? I mean, I know there's one person on administrative leave right now.
Right, and because it's just something so new.
Right.
I think that I know that Superintendent Martell Menlove is also very aware of this situation.
Everybody in the world is
everyone in
aware
the
of
world
this
is pretty much
situation.
aware of the situation. And
Utah steals
and-
food from kids.
right.
And throws it away.
Right, which is terrible, and
It is really bad.
It's like, please don't even say it. But we had a meeting. There was a state board meeting yesterday just regarding some legislation. And so after I know a few of the board members, we were talking about it and very concerned about it. And so I want people to know that, we need to just look into this and find out, like I said, where the disconnect is and where we can fix this.
Here's another issue that I saw, and we're kind of going long on one topic today, but it's relevant and important, I think. But one of the responses was a quasi-apology. It wasn't really an apology, right? And you know how sometimes you can make an apology that's
Right.
not really an apology?
Yes.
That's kind of what it was. It's like, I'm sorry you got offended at our policies. I think we'll
Which
review
puts
them.
the onus on
Right,
you
and
that you
I'm-
are
I'm-
easy to offend.
And I'm paraphrasing, right? But it was that kind of quasi. It's like, oh, whatever, you guys just.
It's transparency. I think
yeah.
in this situation, what helps best is when you're as transparent as possible. And so
Well,
if
and
the
I
school
think just a
district comes
flat-out
out
apology
and,
and
just
said,
says,
"I am so sorry,
or
we
they
never
maybe need
intended."
to explain what happened.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, in full disclosure and transparency.
There
and saying,
is no
and
explanation
Well,
for
you don't
throwing
justify,
the lunch.
right?
Right, I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
justification, but
Yeah.
I'm saying let's at least explain,
Right.
like I said, because sometimes I don't want to fault our schools at the
Right.
same time, because I think sometimes they're put in very precarious positions as far as with the federal government and
Sure.
the strings attached to different programs. And one of these, I've talked to different schools that have taken on a school lunch program,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things they've said off the record to me is they've said, I don't know if we would have started a school lunch program because
knew.
if we would have known all of the strings attached and everything that came with this and just how hard and difficult this would be. They said it was a little bit more smooth when they had, I don't want to promote any certain deli,
Right.
but they had like a deli come in
Right.
and
Right.
provide sandwiches one day
Right.
for children, or kids would bring
Right.
sack lunches or whatever it might be. And maybe we go back to that. I'm not
Well,
opposed.
and-
I mean,
and
we
that
need to
does-
look at all options.
That does beg the argument, right? Does the federal government have a role in school lunch programs in Utah?
And now we're doing school breakfast. I want you to know
I
because
know.
we have
When Utah's behind in the
when
media.
I go to these meetings with other states, I've said this kind of jokingly, but really we're looked at as the Mavericks. I mean, they refer to us as Mavericks because we do our own thing. We're kind of like the country of Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and so. Whatever standards we adopt or whatever it might be,
I
we're
think there's
willing to
some
kind
pride
of
in
break.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have some pride in it, and I think that that's a good thing. But it's interesting because at these different meetings they'll say, the states are doing this with the exception of Utah. Oh, and the states, except Utah actually isn't doing that. And so, it's been interesting because I think we've been able to, we're also very innovative. People don't see that. Even though that we're the lowest funded per pupil in the country and even by far, we're also still very innovative and we're very creative and when we're self-sufficient. This state prides itself on being self-sufficient. And
Sure, and percentage of personal income, right, is way up
Absolutely.
there. So we're not down at the bottom of that list. But yeah, that's exactly right. And we have been innovative. And last night I had an opportunity to talk to people in my area about education, and that was one of the things. Is it's not just a matter of how much money can we dump into the system,
Absolutely.
but how do we meet the needs of this of all of the school kids? And school lunch is part of it, and breakfast could be part of it. But the conversation can include: is it the role of the federal government then to subsidize, especially if they're going to come in and say you didn't have a saltine cracker, so never mind.
I'll tell you the hard part is sometimes what ends up happening is when it's preventing good
Sure.
Samaritans from coming in
That's
and doing
right.
this. I think we always
Oh,
need to
that's
look
right.
at the private industry, look
That's
at
right.
the public and say, is there a solution that could
Sure.
come in? But then sometimes there's so much red tape that it's
can't.
difficult.
That's right.
I mean, there have been times where I don't want to give a specific example, but I've had people offer different services even
Sure.
and say, hey, I'll go into a school
Sure.
Chick-fil-A?
and start this, well, even, my husband has started a programming club, and one of
Yeah.
these times we'll talk about it, but we just started a programming club in our basement for free where we're teaching the kids programming skills, and they're doing amazing. And we've even said, hey, other schools, we'll help. We'll help you start one of
Yeah.
these for free. But sometimes there's all these policies and there's other things
Yeah.
that prevent people coming in and helping. And I think
Right.
it's a shame because we're not looking at what we need to remember is, sometimes we let the accountants and lawyers and, decide things. Then sometimes we need to recheck, like kind of push the reset button and say, what's in the best interest of kids?
Well, and I think that ties in with the STEM efforts that are underway, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math, but also with getting businesses involved and
Absolutely.
saying, this is how we can help. It's not just to sponsor a school, but it is to do the things like you're saying, do a programming club and all these other opportunities. Can we have an entrepreneurship academy, right? Where you teach kids the skills to actually be able to set up their own business. I mean, this is the great American dream is to have
think
your own
look at our
business, even if you
resources.
have a lemonade stand. And luckily, we don't live in a state where you have to have a license and they shut you down.
Right, but I think we need to look. That's one of the things that I love about Utah. I mean, we have so many people with willing hearts and people that are willing to help, and we need to look at those resources, and we need to say, okay, that's what's one of the great parts about Utah is that we have great resources, and let's look at those and say, how can we mesh these together, and what's in the best interest of kids? Again, going back to that point, and
that actually makes a perfect transition to, because it's Utah Solutions, right? And that was, I think, the theme of the State of the State address from Governor Herbert this week. We had the State of the Union on Tuesday. We had the opening remarks by Speaker Lockhart on Monday.
Can I say it was a stark difference? But
it was a very
in my opinion,
it was a very stark difference. So Michelle, what did you think about the State of the State, or any of the other two?
I think it was. I've heard that it was one of the best that we've heard from the governor. I think everybody was pleasantly surprised at the not surprised, but just pleasantly glad to hear messages of working together, of self-sufficiency, of
success and optimism.
Yes.
I thought was kind of the theme. Really.
Yeah. I think it was very strong and with the clear vision of we have problems and this is how we're going to solve them, and let's work together to do it.
And I thought it was great that it wasn't ever really a federal solution. It was let's look inside the walls of Utah and let's see, because look at all of the great things that are happening. And I have several people that constantly tell me, how stark of a difference it is between as soon as you cross the line, even from Utah, and go into like Nevada, go into Las Vegas, and see the housing market. Look at the housing market. Look at kind of
unemployment.
schools, unemployment. But you just have to kind of cross one of the neighboring state borders and see that Utah's made a very fast recovery. And I think it's because of the great leadership. I think we've got a fantastic governor, great leadership in the Senate and House, and we've got a great federal delegation.
I think the governor had been teed up to be really defensive, and I'm glad that's not how it came off. He was a leader, and it was good to see.
I have to say, I think Speaker Lockhart also did a great speech. Right?
She did. She made headlines.
She did.
She made headlines.
She did, and it was funny because the next day she said she got emails about it. Some of them were like, good job, way to go, I agree with you, and some of them said she should be grounded for life. So.
I think the Medicaid issue is hard. It's going to be hard within the Republican Party even.
It's a difficult issue because it's real people and it's real lives, and yet it's also real money, and you run out of money.
Right.
There's just not
federal
unlimited
promises
money.
Cannot be.
Well, you look at transportation funding, for example, with federal promises. Oh, yes, we'll come in, we'll help you build your roads. That's gone. The I-15 rebuild was done on state dollars, no federal dollars. They just run out of money, and then they say, sorry, you can't pay. Sorry, too bad.
Right.
Too bad, so sad. Right, and anyway, so it certainly there's vibrant discussion, robust discussion, right? That's the nice way of saying we're going to really hash this out, and sometimes it's difficult, but it's not necessarily, I don't think, that there's animosity. It's that there's two different viewpoints, and I think you can look at the Zion Curtain again as an issue. So Speaker Lockhart has an opinion, the Senate has a different opinion, right? And I don't necessarily think that they're wrong. They're looking at it and saying, look, show me the data on one side, and the other side is saying, you show me the data, right? Right. And it's an issue in our state, and so it's a different approach, and it's worth talking about. Right. And that doesn't mean that having a conversation makes it wrong. But yeah, I liked both. I liked her kickoff speech. I did not listen to Obama's. Sorry, I'm really sorry.
I didn't.
I followed it on Twitter.
Highlights. I listened to the highlights on national news.
Yeah. And then I did listen to the governor's speech, and it was fun also to talk about moving the state tree away from being the Colorado blue spruce. What is that? And then to the quaking aspen.
Well, and I thought what a great message.
Somebody said an aspen is a town in Colorado.
I know, right?
Right. But I thought it was great.
Utah sagebrush.
Yeah. I think it also sent a great message, to those fourth graders as well, and just to say, look, your opinion can make it. I mean, you can make a difference, and I think that's one of the things that I hope this show even helps portray is just one person really can make a difference and become involved, and what doesn't matter the age, whether you're a fourth grader or if you're 96, take an issue and start making a difference. Yeah. And anyway, but I thought that was great too. There were a lot of things in the State of State that I thought were really great, and made me it was I just felt very optimistic
Right.
about our future. I felt
Yeah.
proud of what we've done, but I also, and
know-
we're not perfect, but I think we're on a great trajectory, and
During
we're
those-
doing the right things.
That's right. And during those down years, I think with the economy, we talked a lot. I heard a lot of leaders during that time, Governor Herbert included, talking about Utah is the best position to come out of this recession.
Yes.
And now we're seeing that he was right. That we were the best position, that we were judicious in our use of the rainy day funds, for example, that we were careful, that we had to make sometimes some very deep, very painful cuts because we balance our budget in the state of Utah. We don't pretend balance, we actually balance our budget.
Right.
And that helped us position ourselves just exactly as they were saying, 5 years ago. And now here we're seeing that 4.1% unemployment rate is fantastic.
Fantastic.
And people are moving in.
And people are moving
Companies
in.
are
Businesses
moving
are coming
in.
in. Right.
And people that
relocating.
aren't from Utah too. I
Yes.
think you've probably all noticed as well, but I've
Yeah.
had people in my neighborhood that have come from all
Right.
different
That's
states,
right.
and
Right.
they've said, hey,
Our
we're-
immigration numbers are one of
Right.
the top ones.
Yeah.
And not
Absolutely.
illegal immigration, just immigration.
Yes.
Just influx.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which affects our schools down the road, but of course.
Yes, but yes, and that could be another whole few
Well,
shows.
population growth. In fact, Governor Herbert said this: the number one issue we face as a state right now is population
I
growth.
thought that
What's
was
happening.
great that he's hit that right off
So,
at
so
at the
it's
beginning.
a good problem to have.
Right.
We have too many kids, Holly.
I might.
Holly.
I might. My kids came from all around the world, so
They're
I did my
helping
part.
to build it up.
They're right, and they're joining the workforce now, and they're contributing, and they're they're
Well,
great.
mine aren't yet.
But yours will.
Yes,
but
they
they're
will.
great. Well, ladies, thank you for joining me. We are coming to the end of another week of On Point
Point.
with Sutherland Institute. No cupcakes here today, but maybe one of these weeks we'll bring one.
Probably not.
Probably not. So thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week.
Thank you.